Okay. Round 5 of the Modern Challenge here at TJ Collectibles. It's rainy outside, so we are all inside playing Magic cards. And I love it because I get to do commentary this round on two players who are both very good Magic players. Scott, I've known for years. We used to sling spells together back at Most Excellent Comics and Cards. Card rooms like that. The Dragon's Lair. For all you Western Mass old school players, you'll remember the Dragon's Lair. I didn't go there much. My home turf was Most X, but once in a while. Scott still lives in the same area. Still battles. Same as me. Nick, I don't know as well. I met him at the very first Modern Challenge here at TJ's. The January Challenge, he lost in top 8. With the same deck he's playing. He's playing a Protect the Geist deck, which is pretty awesome. The only one in the room playing it, as he proudly told me. He's like, I am the only one playing Geist of St Traft. I know I'm the only one. I haven't corroborated that, but I gotta take him at his word. Scott Metcalf is playing the deck he's been playing, Death and Taxes. But not the normal version of Death and Taxes, the green-white version of Death and Taxes. You know, if you're used to Legacy, this is not a Legacy deck. This is a Modern deck, which means he has to branch out. He doesn't have 4 Wasteland. He doesn't have 4 Rishadan Port. He is forced to go into other colors. He still has Mana Denial, right? He still has Ghost Quarter and Tech Edge. But he doesn't have the payoff lands like Caracas. There's no reason to stay 2 colors. So Nick's deck will look like a blue-white control deck until he combo kills his opponent, right? Because he has Geist of St Traft for an untargetable threat. But he has more burn spells, more creatures than his average opponent might expect, right? You're playing against a blue-white deck, you think, oh, I'm the beatdown. I don't have to care about my life total. Not a big deal. But it is a big deal. Because Nick packs Electrolyze, Lightning Helix, Lightning Bolt, Snapcaster to flash them back. End of turn, he has plays like Vendilion and Restoration Angel for 7 power, hit you for 7, Bolt, Snap, Bolt, kill you from 13, stuff like this. Really powerful end of turn plays from Nick Starr. He's playing more of a tempo style. So Helix takes down Thalia, 3 mana Helix, clears the way for the Geist, which attacks. Thalia is pretty good against Geist of St Traft, both blocks and makes all these blue-white spells more expensive. Okay, Scott untaps, 3 mana. Blade Splicer, another excellent blocker. His deck actually full of excellent blockers. For value, he has Eternal Witness, which gets something back and then threatens to trade with the Geist. He has Thalia, which straight up kills it. Blade Splicer token, which straight up kills it with first strike. Restoration Angel, which straight up kills it at instant speed. So I gotta like Scott's chances in this matchup. And I mean, I gotta like Scott's deck in general. I've been a fan of this deck since the first time I saw him play it. I'm like, whoa. Someone playing Aether Vial in Modern? I forgot that card was legal. And presumably so did a lot of his opponents, because no one else plays that card. Maybe the odd Merfolk deck, but you rarely see that. Path to Exile takes out the token, the Golem token. And the removal keeps flowing. Gotta be scary if you're Scott. So he takes 6, he drops to 8. He's a bolt and a crack away from being dead. Now, Scott does have some ways to recoup the life. In the main deck, he has Scavenging Ooze. Post-board, he has a little more, but in the main deck, Scavenging Ooze is really it. Nick keeps the Flash plan alive. He says, okay, in your draw step, I will cast Vendilion Click. We'll see if Scott wants to respond. No, he doesn't. See, at least a Resto looks like 2. A couple Aether Vials drawn after turn 1. Pretty terrible draws after turn 1. And what may be a Path to Exile, I can't really tell. Nick deep in the tank here. I mean, these Restos must be fought through. He can't just win through Restoration Angel. It's not going to happen. It's an incredible blocker. Flash means it forces Nick to tap mana on his turn. 3/4 means it eats both Vendilion and Geist. So yeah, Nick does take the Resto. Scott draws a card off of the Vendilion, and we'll see if he has something better than Restoration Angel. It doesn't look like it. Main phase, Resto. Blink, Blade Splicer. Wow, what a turn. Main phase, of course, to play around any potential Cryptic commands, any potential drawn mana leaks off the top of the deck. Really important to know when to play your cards in the main phase versus at the last possible instant, right? Like some cards you want to play at the last possible instant. Sudden Shock. You want to play Sudden Shock at the last possible instant. Everyone knows this. It's a split-second card that can't respond. Cards like Blessed Alliance, force you to play them at the last possible moment. Sacrifice an attacking creature has to be played during the attack phase. Some cards gain tremendous value when played at instant speed, like Electrolyze. Hard to counter the Electrolyze by making your creature bigger. You still draw a card, whatever. But some things like this Resto, it would have been a disaster if Nick had untapped, drawn a Path, or a Mana Leak, or a Lightning Helix to take out the Blade Splicer, or to counter the spell. It would have been an absolute disaster. So Scott wisely plays it during the main phase to avoid these scenarios, and has a nice army of blockers. Okay, snap Path. That was a good draw by Nick Starr. But Scott is not out of it. This attack does bring him to 1. The Golem eats the Geist, leaving Nick with only a 3/1 flyer in the form of Vendilion Click. Scott at 1 life. The wrinkle here was the Celestial Colonnade that Nick drew. He's got his Ghost Quarter to stop this. So Nick putting himself in a position where any burn spell or any Snapcaster Mage drawn off the top threatens lethal. And of course, Scott has to find a way to deal with the 3/4 flyer. The fact that we're still playing means he probably has found a way to do that. Scott at 1 life, not the 8 that his life total says. Looks to me like this is a Scavenging Ooze. With Ghost Quarter tricks, he should be able to gain the requisite 3 life. Ooh, can't tap like that. Gotta tap the planes. He will have to Ghost Quarter himself. to get 3 activations of the ooze. Let's see if I was right with my read here. First, in for 3. Ooze. There it is. Ooh. I'm not sure about that. I think this leaves the 1-life Scott Metcalf dead to a Vendilion click. Though I may be wrong about the life totals. Scott needs a path to exile. And nope. A scoop instead. Now, I saw the line of Ghost Quarter your own land to get another forest to get 3 Scavenging Ooze activations. I patted myself on the back. I thought to yourself, Zach, you're the best Magic player in this booth right now. What I didn't know was that Scott only is playing 2 forests, both of which were in play. So, as it turns out, Scott, who's played this green-white deck for a really long time, at least 6 months, he's the only guy playing it. He knows his deck better than I do. Go figure. He knew that there was no 3rd forest to fetch up with the Ghost Quarter. He just had to hope that Nick didn't activate his Colonnade. Or really just didn't attack at all, which wasn't going to happen. But Scott made him go through the motions. That's fine. And now we sideboard. In the sideboard of Scott Metcalf, things are a little simpler. It should be pretty obvious what he wants to do. He wants to stop the Geist from hitting him. He wants to keep his life total high so he can resolve and have time to use his techie creatures, his more powerful creatures. So to that end, he will bring in Blessed Alliance. Gain 4 life, target player sacrifices an attacking creature, which can be used with the Geist trigger on the stack. He'll bring in Burrington Forge Tender. Stopping any lightning bolts, unlightning helixes, and electrolyzes. Because if you're Scott, once you see lightning helix, you have to assume your opponent's playing lightning bolt. Very little reason to play helix over bolt. The 3 life is good, but 1 mana is almost always better than 3 life. So that's what I expect Scott to bring in. Not sure what he'll side out. I am not an expert on this deck. Only he is. Only he knows what he's going to side out. Maybe some like Flicker Wisps or Eternal Witnesses. Things that are clunky, expensive, get mana leaked. On Nick's side of the table, he has a sideboard filled with 1-drops. I will hate him if he top 8s because I will have to type in all of these 1-ofs. 1-ofs, not 1-drops. Listen to me. I will have to type them all in to MTG top 8. I'm rooting for Scott Metcalf's 4-ofs solely out of personal interest. But he has Is It Staticaster, he has Supreme Verdict, he has Elspeth, Sun's Champion, and that's about it. He doesn't have much. His deck is already pretty well set up to fight against Scott's, and to be fair, Scott's deck is hard to fight against because no one else is playing it. I would not go to a Modern tournament thinking, oh, I'd better devote at least 3 sideboard slots to green, white, death, and taxes. That's not a reasonable thing to do. because no one plays this deck except Scott. And that's the great thing about Modern, is that you can do this. If I had shown up, I would be the only Lantern player in the room. Even though in my article on tjcollectibles.com, I said not to play Lantern. I would still have played my pet deck, and I probably would have lost. But that's the cool thing about Modern. You can do what you want. You can play what you want. You can do the sideboard choices you want. Check out Ben Cohen's deck tech for what he used in his flex spots in his Bant Eldrazi deck, because it's not like some formats where there are clear best cards and you have to play certain cards and there's no arguing it. You get lots of flex spots in Modern. To the game at hand, though, Scott on the play has his desired start. Turn 1 Aether Vial. He gets to play an unfair game of Magic from here on out. He gets to spend just 1 mana at the start of the game and forever have his creatures have flash and be free, which is pretty crazy thinking about it. I wonder if they knew how good Aether Vial was when they printed it. I sure didn't. I thought that card was garbage. I was way more interested in tapping 9 mana for an Entwined Tooth and Nail. So Nick, if he left in any of his Mana Leaks or Logic Knots or Spell Snares, this is really awkward because of Aether Vial. So, Nick, currently smoking the Serum Visions, decides to put them back on top, both. Scott has no 1-drop. I don't think his deck plays any 1-drops. His ideal 1-drop is Aether Vial. Has a set of Rage of Verge Thickets. Probably wishes one was a Gavany Township, or a Tech Edge, or a Ghost Quarter, or a Stirring Wildwood. This is main phase, activating Aether Vial, putting in Thalia. And very nice sequencing from Scott. I really like it. Realizing that Lightning Bolt is a very likely holding for Nick. Putting in Thalia first during the main phase. Again, an ability that could be played at any time. Instead, he uses it main phase correctly. Putting his legendary creature into play so that he can cast Leonin Arbiter and completely lock Nick out from using that 1 mana at the end of turn. He knew. He knew that Nick could have a Lightning Bolt. Good on you, Scott. I like it. Lots of players default to the last possible instant to use their instance. And that's really not always good. So if you're a player that finds yourself constantly getting blown out by combat tricks, think about the sequencing of your instance. Think, oh, could I have not been gotten blown out? I tried to Magma Spare my opponent's creature mid-combat, and he pumped it. Think about what you could do differently, how you could sequence differently. All Scott has is an attack for 2 and a go, sitting on at least a Forge Tender. I saw that in his hand. Lightning Bolt. In response, Forge Tender. Stops Lightning Bolt. White counterspells, ladies and gentlemen. White counterspells that cost 0 mana. OP. End of turn. Scott puts in a Scavenging Ooze, which will immediately begin eating creatures. Scott eats his Forge Tender, gains 1. Shout out to Joe Horton in the background there with the Mountain Dew shirt, keeping track of life totals for us. Joe, a Burn Stalwart. Interesting decision there by Scott to not use any more ooze activations. I'm sure he had a reason. I'd be interested to hear it. He did not want to remove his Thalia. He did not want to remove his opponent's Lightning Bolts. Probably figuring that any draw in his deck he won't need to use his mana for, because he has the Aether Vials, and he can use it anytime. So, that being said, he crashes, and before damage, now he'll do it. Nothing ventured, nothing lost. Not really a big deal there, because he has a ton of mana available to him. This is actually kind of an awkward draw by Scott, because in his deck, he only has, let's see, 12, 17... He only has 21 lands, 4 of which are Ghost Quarter, 1 Tectonic Edge, 1 Gavony, 2 Stirring Wildwood, 3 Horizon Canopy. Definitely unfortunate that he's drawn so many non-spell lands. A Gavony Township would have been a great draw right there. And one of the draws in the deck that would have made Scott regret not end of turn oozing. Empty-handed, he just has to let his opponent do his worst. He's probably worried about Supreme Verdict. There are 0 in Nick's 75. Oh, excuse me, there's 1 in the sideboard. But that's not many. And Scott has to feel good because Nick hasn't cast it yet. So this appears to be in Nick's upkeep. That was either upkeep or draw step. That was upkeep, okay. So Leonin and Arbiter plus Ghost Quarter equals Wasteland in a lot of cases. And here is the resto. 3/4 body, pretty good. But Scavenging Ooze goes to work on the graveyard. Scott would love to draw a Path to Exile right here. He would love to draw a Gavony Township right here. He would love to draw a Flicker Wisp right here. Forge Tender's pretty good. Of all the draws that Scott could have, that's not the worst. That's probably somewhere in the middle. Somewhere in the bottom 40th percentile. Not bad. At least it wasn't a Razor Verge Thicket. Scott Metcalf's Hate Bears, Hate Creatures, are really constricting what Nick can do. Scavenging Ooze makes it so that Nick cannot Snapcaster. Leonin Arbiter makes it so he cannot fetch land. Burnton makes it so he cannot burn. Keranos is good, but it doesn't, not that good here. Nick has to go to 1. He chump blocks. It's basically curtains. Yeah, here we go. That Leonin Arbiter, though. Wow. Get your copies now, ladies and gentlemen, because Scott Metcalf is proving that this is a real Magic card. People have flirted with that card for a long time. Excuse me. But Leonin Arbiter, plus all these spells, Path to Exile, and Ghost Quarter, all these effects that let the opponent get a land in exchange for an undercosted effect, as we saw that game, that was pretty sick. His opponent would have had at least 2 more mana, if not for the Arbiter, and he would have gotten to use his fetch land earlier. Nice. I really respect Scott Metcalf playing this deck. Being who he is. Being the only devoted player of this green-white Aether Vial deck. I love it, man. It makes me want to put this deck together. So if you're looking to get into an aggressive deck in Modern that is not super expensive, look into this one. I mean, geez, Leonin Arbiter has to only be a few bucks. Blade Splicer was reprinted in Modern Masters, one of them. Thalia, sure, you got to shell out a little bit for Thalia. Scavenging Ooze still cheap. You buy your Noble Hierarchs, and you're there. I mean, geez, this is a sweet deck. So, another match in our tournament comes down to a Game 3. I love it. In April, we had very few Game 3s. Almost every match was lopsided. I was really bad at picking them. Apparently, because we were just getting super one-sided matches. Every match today has gone to a Game 3. Every match has been close. And this is what I love to see, the Modern metagame evolving. People bringing slightly different decks. People tweaking their strategies, having more sideboard cards against Death Shadow. This format is like a legacy that everyone can get into. And I love it. I heard a stat once, and I'm going to repeat it unverified, as though it were just true, that if everyone, that out of all the Magic players in existence, only one out of, I think it was 1 out of 100 players could have one of each dual land. Simply because there are so many players now and so few original duels in existence. They're on the reserve list. They can't be reprinted. They will not be reprinted. WotC has always doubled down on the reserve list, tripled down, quadrupled down, whatever. So you can't play Legacy. Basically, not everyone can play Legacy. People get priced out. Modern is not that way. They will keep reprinting Noble Hierarchs and Engineered Explosives and Chalices of the Void and Karn Liberated and whatever. Whatever. They will keep reprinting them if more players keep playing Magic. If Magic doubles, they'll just print more cards. Which is awesome. It makes it less of a stock market and more of a player's experience. Modern will never go the way of Legacy because of this. Because, oh, Scott Metcalf breaks Modern in half. Everyone realizes that this deck is amazing. Razor Verge Thicket goes up to $40. Well, they'll reprint Razor Verge Thicket. So that everyone can play. I'm sure they're going to reprint Aether Vial soon. It's a $30 Magic card. A year from now, it might be a $10 Magic card. Which is awesome. Punish the people that speculate. And reward the players. Anyways, onto this game. So we've had a few things happen. We've had remands. Remand targeted Thalia. Geist got slammed. Noble Hierarch got slammed. It's now on Scott to stop the Geist. How will he decide to deal with this 2-2? Now, most decks in Modern do not have that many ways of dealing with a 2-2 untargetable, as strange as that sounds. Scott's deck has a plethora of ways. He can block it with half his deck. He's going to begin by casting another Aether Vial. Man, I kind of feel bad at how many Aether Vials he's drawn this match. It's just too many. You want exactly one. Once in a while you want two, but this is not what he wants to be doing right now. 3 mana, Blade Splicer. Tapping Aether Vial. Thalia. Wow. Good start from Scott Metcalf. He has 6 power on the board. Turn 3. 2 of the creatures can block Geist profitably. Block Geist and live. So Nick would have to have 2 kill spells right now to get in. And Thalia's in play, so it's going to be tough for him. So 2 mana Lightning Bolt targets Thalia. That's a start. If Path were to hit the Golem token, there would be a clear route to dealing 6. But can it? Does he want to blow a Path on a 3/3 token, leaving himself wide open to Flicker Wisp? To Resto Angel. Wide open. I would not want to be in Nick Starr's shoes right now. This is not a good matchup. And he has to be feeling it. And it looks like he might just go for it. He might say, oh, if you have it, you have it. Yep, he's saying if you have the Flicker Wisp, if you have the Resto, you have the Flicker Wisp, you have the Resto. Scott goes to 13. And really, I mean, I'm not saying Nick Starr's play is wrong. It's risky. Yeah, I mean, we all know it's risky. Is it wrong, though? It's a miserable matchup. He has very little hope. So he chooses the risky path. He makes the play that he thinks gives him the most chance of winning. Which is very reasonable. It's a very reasonable way to play the game. If it's a good matchup, you play conservatively. If it's a bad matchup, you play aggressively. These are just the tenets of Magic. This is just how you play. So he takes a risky play. We'll see if it pays off. Upkeep. Trigger on the stack. Scott draws a card and puts in the Teague. Now he moves to his draw step. We'll see if he can find a Flicker Wisp or a Resto to really get some value. Another Noble, and Splicer gets in for 3. At least starts to beat Nick down. And another Aether Vial. Really unfortunate by Scott. That's the problem with playing Aether Vial, right? It's such a powerful card, but you just hate to draw more than one. You just hate to top deck that card on turn 5. So let's see how Nick does this. Lightning Bolt, target Teague. Attack for 6. Now Scott's got to be feeling the pressure because, well, he's just an attack and a bolt away from being dead. And we know that Nick has a Lightning Helix in his hand. How will Scott play this? He's at 7. His opponent is at 14. He'll start with an attack for 3. His opponent is at 11. 3 mana. Witness. That's not bad. That gets back a Gaddock. Stirring Wildwood has reach. But the Helix means that Nick Starr burns Scott out. Really unfortunate. I can't believe that Geist dealt so much damage. Nick Starr does exactly lethal damage to Scott Metcalf. Scott, you played it well. You just drew too many Aether Vials. And you drew 0 Flicker, 0 Resto. The only thing on that last turn, you could have considered viling back the Horizon Canopy to draw a card, right? To try and hit a Path if you still had him in your deck, or a Flicker Wisp, or maybe even a Scavenging Ooze. That's a line you could have taken. That's a really passive, scared line. But it was an option, right? Instead of dropping to 3 life versus Celestial Colonnade and potential burn spells, you could have tried to dig 1 card deeper. Because the Eternal Witness represents a block on the Geist. Regardless, the Eternal Witness and the Teague represent that. As a judgment call, though, right? Because Scott was trying to set up lethal attacks. And if he had done my play and missed, well, then he's in really bad shape, right? He doesn't have a Teague in play. He traded the 2/2 with an ability for a random card from his deck, which could have been allowed. Just something to consider. Not sure that my play was right, but it was an option. Good job, Nick Starr. Starting at 0-1, climbing all the way back to 4-1. He has to win a couple more matches to lock up his second top 8 of the challenge. Guys and girls watching on YouTube, I hope that you just let this playlist keep going. Watch round 6. See you in a minute.